Most people talk about spiritual awakening like it's the finish line. They think recognizing the light means they've arrived. But what if I told you there's a stage beyond awakening that almost nobody discusses? A stage where you're no longer seeking because you become what you sought? What if you've already reached it without even knowing? The Sophia stage isn't announced with fireworks or mystical visions. It simply is. And the question isn't whether you can reach it. The question is whether you're already there, living it, breathing it without the need for anyone to confirm it. This isn't about achieving another spiritual milestone. This is about recognizing what you've already become when no one was watching. Most confuse spiritual awakening with the end of the journey. Basing the light means arriving at the destination. But awakening is just the first breath of a much deeper transformation. What comes after carries no certificates, no external validation, no dramatic revelations. The ancient philosophers called it Sophia, not as knowledge you acquire, but as embodied wisdom flowing through every cell of your body. This state doesn't show itself in what you know, but in how you exist. In this video, you'll discover 8 signs that suggest you've already reached this state. We'll navigate through the insights of Carl Jung, Alan Watts, and Schopenhauer, not as an academic exercise, but as a mirror for what already lives within you. These signs aren't a checklist to tick off. They're resonances, vibrations that either echo in you or remain silent. Then, are you ready to recognize that you might already be where you've always wanted to go? The first shift that points to Sophia is subtle yet fundamental. Your inner landscape has changed. The old wounds are still there, their scars visible on the topography of your soul, but they no longer bleed. Jung spoke of shadow integration as the central work of the individuation journey. In his analyses, he showed that a person only becomes whole when they stop projecting the dark parts of their psyche outward. In the Sophia stage, this integration is no longer an effort. It has happened. You're no longer fighting yourself. The inner voices that told you for years that you weren't music, enough that you were broken, wrong, have lost their power, not because you defeated them, but because you understood they were part of the chorus that led you to this point. Jung recognized repeatedly in his work with patients that the parts of ourselves we reject most often hold the keys to our wholeness. The shadow isn't the enemy. It's the forgotten brother waiting in the dark for acknowledgement. The wound has become wisdom. It no longer tells a story of victim and perpetrator, but of transformation and wholeness. In this integration lies a power that goes far beyond intellectual understanding. It's a cellular acceptance, a deep yes to everything you are and music have been. Look at your past. Do you still feel the sharp sting of shame? Or do you only see the necessary path? The scar differs from a healing that erases. A scar remains as testimony. It says, I was there. I burned. I walked through fire and didn't come out unscathed, but whole. There's a deep dignity in accepting your own story without beautifying or cursing it. The ancestral burdens that once seemed to crush you have lost their weight. They're still there, woven into your cellular memory, but they no longer dictate your present. They become an inner compass, a silent knowing about which patterns you don't need to repeat. You no longer visit these old pains obsessively. They're simply part of your history. Accepted, integrated, transformed. The ghosts that once haunted you have become teachers. They speak in whispers now, not screams. Have you noticed you're no longer afraid of being seen? Not because you become perfect, but because the idea of perfection has lost its relevance. You exist in radical acceptance of what was, what is, and what will be. This acceptance isn't passive. It's the most active form of presence there is. It's the courage to stand naked before existence without the armor of pretense or the shield of spiritual superiority. The second sign is paradoxical, and precisely for that reason so revealing. Your spiritual ego has died. Alan Watts warned emphatically about the subtlest of all traps, the ego disguising itself as spirituality. He observed how seekers build a new self-image that wants to be higher, purer, more awakened than others. The spiritual ego is perhaps the most stubborn form of self-deception because it adorns itself with the noblest intentions. In the Sophia stage, this performance ends. You no longer collect spiritual identities. The labels disappear. Awakened, healed, enlightened, conscious. These words have lost their appeal, not because you want to be humble, but because you've recognized they're empty. You're not searching to be someone. You simply are. This simplicity isn't reduction, but liberation. The endless comparisons stop, but you no longer measure your vibration against others. You don't judge who's conscious and who's asleep, who's figured out, and who's still stumbling in the dark. Every being is exactly where they need to be in their own perfect chaos, in their own necessary development. This recognition brings a deep stillness with it. You can sit with someone who's just beginning their journey and feel no urge to enlighten them. You can watch someone make the same mistakes you made and not interfere. This isn't indifference. It's profound respect for the sacred timing of each soul's unfolding. Your spiritual practices, if they still exist, are no longer obligations. You don't meditate to prove you're disciplined. You don't do yoga to demonstrate your progress. These actions have become natural expressions like breathing or walking. When they happen, they happen. When they don't, that's completely fine. 2. There's no inner voice condemning you anymore. Why is Sophia so invisible to the spiritual world? Because it offers no show, no dramatic healing experiences, no spectacular awakening stories, no promises of quick transformation. It's quiet, discreet, almost imperceptible. In a world screaming for the extraordinary, the ordinary live with complete consciousness is the most radical form of being. The third sign manifests not in mind but in flesh. Your body has become the carrier of wisdom. Polyvagal theory developed by Stephen Poore shows how our nervous system shifts between different states, fight, flight, snorts, freeze, or social engagement. In the Sophia stage, your nervous system has learned to regulate itself not through constant external techniques, but through a deeply anchored inner wisdom. Your body has become your oracle. You no longer search outside for signs and confirmation. Truth speaks through your cells, through the tension in your chest, through the expansion in your breath. When something's wrong, you feel it as tightness, as heaviness, as discomfort that needs no words. When something's right, something expands within you, a silent yes rising from the depths of your body. You no longer need rationalization to know what's true. The body already knows, and you've learned to listen. This somatic intelligence is older than the mind, wiser than any thought. Energy flows through you like water finding its way. You don't force states of high vibration. You don't suppress moments of stillness and withdrawal. There's an organic dance between expansion and contraction, thus between giving and receiving, between activity and rest. This rhythm isn't controlled. It's lived. You've stopped trying to maintain a constant state of bliss or enlightenment. You understand that the low notes are as essential to the symphony as the high ones. Depression isn't failure. Anxiety isn't regression. They're weather patterns moving through the landscape of your being, and you've learned to let them pass without identifying with them. Many spiritual seekers use their practices as escape from a body. They transcend upward away from the dirty, painful, unpredictable matter. Sophia is a complete return to conscious embodiment. Spirit and matter are no longer at war. They dance together. Two aspects of the same existence united in you. Presence in the body is the most concrete sign of Sophia. It's not about constant transcendental experiences, out-of-body journeys, or mystical visions. It's about fully inhabiting every single second of your life, feeling every breath, acknowledging every sensation, permeating every movement with awareness. That's the magic lying in total presence. The fourth sign is often misunderstood. Your solitude has become fullness. Schopenhauer, in his radical honesty, defended existential self-sufficiency. He recognized that true freedom lies in not depending on the external world to feel complete. In the Sophia stage, solitude is no longer a wound to be healed. It's a state of wholeness. You no longer fill holes with connections. Your relationships are conscious choices, not desperate necessities. You love without losing yourself. You connect without annihilating yourself. The love you give comes from abundance, not from lack. That's the difference between neediness and genuine intimacy. Schopenhauer described most human relationships as attempts to fill one's own inner emptiness through the other. But a relationship between two emptinesses only creates greater emptiness when you come from fullness. However, you don't meet the other as a solution, but as a complement. The relationship becomes a shared dance, not mutual rescue. There's no more rush to find your soul tribe, meet your twin flame, discover your life purpose through others. You're already complete. The connections that come are gifts, not salvations. They enrich what's already rich. They expand what's already vast. You don't need anyone to make you whole, because music, you were never broken. This realization fundamentally changes how you relate. You stop using people as mirrors to validate your existence. You stop seeking completion in another's eyes. The loneliness you once feared has revealed itself as the very ground of your freedom. Why does voluntary isolation become sacred? It's not escape from the world, not misanthropy, not withdrawal from fear. It's the recognition that the deepest encounter possible is the encounter with yourself. In the silence of your own company, you find the entire universe. You're not lonely in solitude. You're complete, the intimacy with emptiness. You no longer fear the inner silence, the absence of stimulation, the quiet without purpose, the nothing that contains everything. Emptiness has revealed itself as the womb from which all creativity, all inspiration, all truth is born. You rest in it like a child in its mother's arms. The fifth sign touches the root of human existence. Your will has transformed. Schopenhauer identified the blind will as the unconscious force driving us to suffering through endless desire. This insatiable hunger for more, for different, for better is the source of our torment. Sophia is the stage where this blind will is recognized, accepted, and transmuted into conscious action. You act without being driven by lack. As your choices are no longer reactions to pain, you're not trying to plug holes or flee from discomfort. Your actions spring from a quiet center, not from a screaming wound. There's a fundamental difference between action from desperation and action from presence. The compulsive search ends. You no longer need to find your life purpose, fulfill your destiny, manifest abundance. You simply live. Life organizes itself around this presence, not because you become passive, but because you've stopped swimming against the current. You move with it, in it, as it. This doesn't mean you don't have goals or desires. It means your relationship to them has fundamentally shifted. You pursue what calls to you, but you're not enslaved by the outcome. The doing becomes its own reward, and success or failure are just stories you're no longer attached to. Your will becomes expression, not imposition. You create, you love, you work. You move in a world, but without the tension of forcing results. Action becomes dance, not struggle. You give your best and then let go, but the outcome no longer rests in your clenched fists. Why? Acceptance isn't passivity. Sophia doesn't mean giving up on life, but full participation without attachment to the fruits. It's a detached action the Eastern texts have spoken of for millennia. You dance with life without the need to control where the dance leads. The sixth sign concerns your relationship with time itself. Time's tyranny dissolves. Schopenhauer saw time as one of the forms through which the will imprisons us in cycles of anxiety and regret. Past and future are constructs.